Chaik was a kind man who lived in a small town where everyone knew him. He had lost his sight years ago in an accident, but he never allowed darkness to take over his heart. Even though he could not see the sun, he could feel its warmth every morning. He loved music deeply and taught children how to play simple songs using drums and flutes. Many people in the village admired him for his calm nature and gentle smile. They often said that though his eyes were closed, his heart could see beauty that others could not. He lived alone in a small house that his late parents had left behind. Every day he walked to the village school with the help of his walking stick. He knew every corner of the road by heart, the sound of the stream nearby, the smell of roasted corn by the roadside, and the laughter of children playing. Though his life was simple, it was filled with peace. One sunny afternoon after class, Chaik heard a soft voice asking for directions. The voice belonged to a young woman named Amara. She had come from another town to visit her aunt, who lived near the school. Chaik listened to her voice and smiled. There was something gentle about the way she spoke, and for the first time in a long while, his heart felt warm. He helped her find her way, and before she left, she thanked him kindly. After that first meeting, Amara began to visit more often. She said she enjoyed listening to his students play music, and Chaik enjoyed talking to her. They would sit under the mango tree outside the school, and he would tell her stories about his childhood. She laughed easily, and her laughter made him feel alive again. Soon, word spread around the village that the blind teacher had found a friend. The townspeople were happy for him, but some whispered among themselves. They noticed that Amara was very beautiful, her skin smooth, her hair always shining, and her dresses bright. Some wondered why she spent so much time with a blind man who had little to offer. But Chaik didn't hear the whispers. His heart was too busy beating with hope. Amara, on the other hand, had her own thoughts. She liked attention and the things money could buy. She saw how respected Chaik was and heard that he had saved some money over the years. She thought to herself that being with a kind man like him could bring her an easy life. He would never argue or demand too much. He could not even see what she did. So she decided to play the part of a loving woman. She started visiting him more often, bringing him food and gifts. Chaik thought she did it out of love, but deep inside she was only building his trust. The villagers noticed and admired her, thinking she was kind. Some even said, "Amara is a blessing to that man." Hearing this praise made her smile proudly. One evening, Chaik sat on his porch and said softly, "Amara, I may not see your face, but I feel that your heart is beautiful." His words touched her for a moment, but she quickly brushed it off. She forced a smile and replied, "You are too kind, Chaik." He could not see the emptiness in her eyes when she said it. As time passed, Chaik grew more certain that she was the one he wanted to spend his life with. He told his cousin Obina, "She brings me light. I cannot see, but when she speaks, I feel the world is bright again." Obina was happy for him but also cautious. "My brother," he said gently, "make sure her heart is as kind as her words." But Chaik only laughed. "Love does not ask for proof," he said. A few weeks later, Chaik decided to propose. He prepared carefully with the help of his students. They sang a soft song for her in the school compound. When Amara arrived, she was surprised to see flowers arranged in a heart shape on the ground. Chaik stood there holding a small box. His hands trembled, but his voice was steady as he said, "Amara, I cannot see your face, but I feel your soul. Will you marry me?" The children clapped and the villagers nearby cheered. Everyone waited for her answer. For a moment, Amara hesitated. She thought about his blindness and how difficult life might be. But then she remembered the whispers about his savings and the respect he had in town. She smiled sweetly and said, "Yes, Chaik. I will marry you." The crowd cheered and Chaik's face lit up with joy. He held her hand and whispered, "You have given me light again." His words were full of emotion and some people even shed tears of happiness. But deep inside, Amara's heart was cold. She looked around at the smiling faces and thought, "If only they knew I don't mean any of this." After the proposal, everyone in town began preparing for their wedding. Chaik's friends helped him organize the ceremony. He wanted it to be simple but meaningful. Amara pretended to be excited, but in private she told her friends that she was marrying a blind man only because she wanted comfort. "He can't even see my beauty," she said laughing. "But he will give me everything I want." Her friends laughed with her and one of them asked, "Aren't you afraid he might find out?" Amara shook her head confidently. "How will he? He can't even see his own reflection, let alone mine." Meanwhile, Chaik was busy choosing songs for the ceremony. He wanted the day to be filled with joy and music. Every evening he practiced with his students, teaching them a song that said, "Love is not what the eyes see but what the heart feels." He believed those words deeply. The night before the wedding he couldn't sleep. He sat outside, feeling the cool breeze, and smiled to himself. "Tomorrow I will have a wife," he whispered. "A woman who loves me despite my blindness." His heart was full of peace, and he thanked God for giving him what he thought was true love. But far away, Amara was celebrating with her friends. She laughed loudly, telling them that her life was about to become easy. "He will never know what I do," she said. "He is blind and foolishly kind." Her words showed no mercy, but she didn't realize that life always finds a way to reveal the truth. As the morning sun rose, the village began to buzz with excitement. Everyone was ready for the wedding of the blind teacher and the beautiful woman. The air was filled with the sound of drums, laughter, and joy. Chaik stood tall, wearing his best clothes, his heart open and full of hope. When Amara walked down the path to meet him, her dress shining in the light, the crowd cheered. To everyone it looked like a story of love conquering all. But only the sky knew that beneath her smile, her heart carried lies. And as Chaik reached out his hand, believing he was touching true love, fate quietly waited, ready to teach them both what real sight truly means. The days after the wedding were peaceful on the outside but full of hidden truth beneath. Chaik was the happiest man in the village. Every morning he thanked God for giving him a wife like Amara. He believed she was his blessing, his light in the darkness. He often said, "Even though I cannot see her face, I can feel her love." He spoke those words with so much faith that anyone listening would smile. But not everyone shared his belief. Obinna, his cousin, had always watched Amara carefully. He noticed how her smile faded the moment Chaik turned his head away. He saw how she sighed when people praised her for being a good wife. She did all her duties but without love. She cooked, cleaned, and smiled in public, but her eyes always looked bored. One afternoon, Obinna went to the market and stopped near a group of young women talking. To his shock, Amara's voice came from among them. She was laughing loudly. "Do you know what is funny?" she said to her friends. "Everyone thinks I'm some kind of saint for marrying a blind man. They don't know I did it because he's gentle and easy to control. He will give me anything I want. How can I love someone who cannot even see me?" Her friends laughed, and Amara continued proudly, "I tell him I love him and he believes it like a child. He's blind in more than his eyes." The words stung Obinna's heart. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He walked away shaking his head. That night, he visited Chaik and sat beside him on the porch. The night air was quiet, and only the sound of crickets filled the silence. "My brother," Obinna began softly, "I need to tell you something important." Chaik smiled. "Go ahead. You sound serious." Obinna hesitated, then sighed. "It's about Amara. I heard her at the market today. She said things that hurt me deeply, things about you." Chaik frowned. "About me?" "Yes," Obinna said carefully. "She laughed about marrying you. She said she doesn't love you and only did it for comfort." For a long time Chaik said nothing. His face was calm, but his fingers trembled slightly. "Obinna," he said finally, "I know you care for me, but maybe you misunderstood her. People gossip. Words can be twisted." Obinna looked at him with pity. "I wish I misunderstood, brother. But I heard her voice clearly." Chaik smiled faintly. "Amara is kind. She would never say such things. You'll see, time will prove you wrong." Obinna sighed. He knew Chaik wouldn't believe him. "I only told you because I love you," he said before leaving. That night, Chaik couldn't sleep. He tried to forget what Obinna said, but the words kept echoing in his head. "She doesn't love you. She only wants comfort." He turned on his bed, trying to shake off the thought, but it clung to his heart like a shadow. The next few days he tried to act normal. Amara cooked for him, talked sweetly, and even sang while cleaning. Her voice was lovely, but now, every note felt like a lie. He wanted to believe she loved him, yet something inside him had changed. One evening as the sun went down, Amara's friend came to visit. The two women sat outside, thinking Chaik had gone to the backyard. But he had returned quietly and was sitting near the window. Their voices carried through the still air. Amara laughed loudly. "Can you believe he thinks I love him? Sometimes I feel sorry for him, but then I remember how easy my life is now. He never argues or questions me. He can't even see if I roll my eyes." Her friend giggled. "You're wicked, Amara. What if he finds out?" "Find out?" she said proudly. "He's blind. He will never know. He's like a lost child. As long as I say sweet words, he believes them." Chaik froze. Every word pierced him like a knife. He felt as if the world around him had fallen into silence. His heart broke slowly, one word at a time. He sat still, his hands shaking, his breath uneven. When her friend left, he remained there in the dark, unable to move. Later that night, Amara came inside and called softly, "Chaik, are you home?" He answered calmly, "Yes, my love." His voice was soft but carried a strange quietness that made her pause. "You're so silent," she said lightly. He smiled gently. "I was just thinking. Life is full of lessons, isn't it?" She laughed. "You and your deep thoughts." Then she went to bed, not knowing that he had heard everything. Chaik sat alone for hours. He thought about all the moments he had loved her, her laughter, her voice, her touch, and realized they were all lies. He wanted to be angry, to shout, to cry, but his heart was too heavy for anger. He whispered to himself, "So this is the truth." By morning his decision was made. He wouldn't confront her with rage. He would let her expose her own heart. But first he would teach her what true love really meant. Love that saw beyond the eyes. Over the next few days, Chaik behaved as if nothing had happened. He was calm, even cheerful. Amara noticed his gentle behavior and thought her secret was safe. "He loves me too much to suspect anything," she told herself proudly. But Chaik began to act differently in small ways. He asked her questions she didn't expect. "Amara," he said one morning, "do you think love can exist without sight?" She laughed softly. "Of course, Chaik. Love is about the heart." He nodded. "That's what I always believed too. But sometimes hearts can pretend, don't you think?" She frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," he said with a smile. "Just thinking aloud." He continued to treat her kindly, even more kindly than before. He bought her gifts, complimented her beauty, and sang for her at night. She enjoyed it and became more confident in her lies. She didn't know that every song he sang was filled with hidden meaning. His words spoke of false love and unseen truth. One evening, Chaik invited her to the village square. He said he wanted to perform a song he had written for her in front of everyone. Amara was pleased. She loved attention. She dressed beautifully and followed him there. The villagers gathered, excited to hear their beloved teacher sing. Chaik stood with his guitar, his face calm. When he began to play, his voice was steady but full of sadness. He sang about a man who loved a woman whose heart was blind. He sang about how blindness of the eyes was nothing compared to blindness of the soul. The song was so moving that many in the crowd grew silent. Amara's smile faded as she listened. Every word cut close to her secret. Her hands grew cold. When he finished, the crowd clapped loudly, but she stood frozen. Chaik turned toward her and said softly, "That song is for the one I love, the one who taught me that not every smile comes from the heart." The crowd murmured, unsure of what he meant. Amara forced a laugh, but her voice shook. Chaik bowed his head and walked away slowly, leaving her standing there, her cheeks burning. That night she tried to talk to him, but he remained quiet. "Chaik," she whispered, "why did you sing that song?" He answered gently, "Because truth deserves to be heard, even by those who pretend not to see." Her heart trembled. She looked at him and realized he knew. But he said nothing more. He simply turned toward his room and closed the door, leaving her alone with the weight of her own lies. That night, for the first time, Amara could not sleep. The man she thought was blind had seen her more clearly than anyone ever had. That night was quiet, but Chaik's heart was heavy. He had finished teaching at the village music school earlier than usual and decided to surprise Amara with her favorite roasted plantains. He smiled softly as he walked home, his cane tapping gently against the ground. He thought about how lucky he was, a man who could no longer see, yet still blessed with a beautiful wife. But that evening would change everything. When he reached the gate, he heard laughter inside. Amara's laughter. He smiled and paused for a moment, happy to hear her joyful voice. But then as he got closer, her tone changed. It was sharp and mocking. "Can you imagine?" Amara said loudly, her voice filled with pride. "I'm married to a blind man, yet everyone calls me lucky. They think I did something noble. Ah, if only they knew I only married him for his money." Her friend laughed. "Amara, you're wicked. What if he finds out?" "Find out?" Amara scoffed. "He's blind. What can he see? What can he do? He doesn't even know when I roll my eyes or fake a smile. He gives me whatever I want, jewelry, dresses, money, and he calls me his angel. But in truth I only pity him." The laughter that followed felt like knives in Chaik's heart. His hand froze on the gate. The roasted plantains fell to the ground. His breath came slowly, painfully. He stood there for a long time, unable to move. His world went silent, except for the echo of her cruel laughter. Tears rolled down his cheeks. The woman he had loved with all his heart, the woman he trusted, had turned his blindness into a joke. He wanted to burst inside and ask her why, but his voice was gone. The pain was too deep. He turned quietly and walked away from the gate, each step heavier than the last. That night, Chaik didn't sleep. He sat in his small study holding his cane and listening to the sound of crickets. His mind was full of memories, her gentle words, her soft laughter, the way she held his hand in public. Were all those moments lies? At dawn he made his decision. He would leave but not to escape. He would leave to heal, and to change everything. The next morning, Amara woke up to find him packing a small bag. She yawned lazily. "Chaik, where are you going?" He smiled gently, hiding the storm in his heart. "My love," he said quietly, "I've been invited to teach music abroad. It's an opportunity one can't miss. I'll be gone for some months." Her eyes lit up, not with sadness but with excitement. "Abroad? That's good. You'll make more money. Don't worry about me. I'll take care of everything here." He nodded. "I know you will." She walked to him and placed her hand on his shoulder. "You're such a good man, Chaik. I'll miss you." He smiled again, though his heart broke at the touch. "I'll miss you too." He left that morning, carrying only a few clothes and his music notebook. Amara watched him go, not realizing she was watching the beginning of her own downfall. When Chaik reached the city, he met his old friend, Dr. Adebayo, a skilled eye specialist who had once offered him surgery. Chaik had refused before, afraid of the pain and uncertain of the results. But this time something inside him had changed. He wanted to see again, not for the world, not for fame, but to open his eyes to the truth. "Doctor," he said firmly, "I'm ready." The doctor studied him carefully. "Are you sure, Chaik? The operation is risky. It might work or it might not." Chaik nodded. "I have nothing to lose. Even if I remain blind, at least I'll know I tried." The doctor smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll do it." The surgery was long and painful. There were days when Chaik couldn't move without feeling dizzy, and nights when the pain in his eyes felt unbearable. But he endured it all. He remembered Amara's cruel words, and each time the memory burned, it gave him strength. Weeks turned into months. Slowly his eyes began to respond. One morning when the nurse opened the curtain, light flooded into the room, faint and blurry but real. Chaik gasped softly. For the first time in years he could see shadows and outlines. He blinked again and again, tears filling his eyes. "Doctor," he whispered, "I can see light." Dr. Adebayo smiled widely. "That's a good sign, my friend. You're healing." After 2 more surgeries, his sight slowly returned. Not perfect, but enough for him to see faces, colors, and expressions. The world looked new again. When he looked into the mirror, he hardly recognized the man staring back. His hair had more gray, his eyes carried quiet wisdom, and his smile was different, softer, deeper. He was no longer the man who believed every word blindly. Months later, Chaik was fully recovered. He started working at a music academy in the city, where his talent brought him fame. People loved his songs, especially one titled, "The Eyes of the Heart." It told the story of love, betrayal, and redemption, though no one knew it was his own story. Meanwhile, back in the village, Amara lived as she pleased. She spent his money freely, buying new clothes and jewelry. Whenever neighbors asked about Chaik, she smiled proudly and said, "My husband is abroad, teaching the rich how to sing. He sends me money every week." Sometimes her friends joked, "You're lucky. A blind husband is the best. He doesn't see, he doesn't ask, he just pays." Amara would laugh and say, "Exactly. My life is perfect." But deep down she had no idea that her perfect life was about to fall apart. One afternoon she received a letter. The handwriting was familiar, Chaik's. Read, "My dearest Amara, I'm finally returning home. I've missed you and the village dearly. Prepare a feast. I want to see your beautiful smile again." Her heart fluttered. "Finally," she said aloud. "He's coming back." She told everyone in the neighborhood that her husband was returning rich and successful. "We'll have a celebration," she announced proudly. "He'll bring gifts for everyone." She decorated the house, wore her best dress, and spent the day looking in the mirror. "He will never know what I did," she whispered confidently. "He's still blind." But that night, when a car stopped at the gate, she didn't notice the quiet figure standing there watching her. Chaik stepped out, his eyes calm, his face unreadable. For the first time in years he could see her clearly, her beauty, her pride, her deceit. His heart trembled, not with love but with quiet strength. He whispered to himself, "The blind man you mocked can now see." When she ran to greet him, smiling widely, she didn't know the truth that stood before her. that the man she had deceived was now ready to show her who he truly was. And for the first time in her life, Amara was the one who could not see what was coming next. The day of Chaik's return was bright and full of excitement. The news had spread across the village: Chaik is back from the city. People who loved him for his gentle nature and beautiful music filled the compound. There were neighbors, old friends, and even the church choir that had missed his songs. Drums sounded, children danced, and everyone waited to welcome the man who had brought pride to their village. Amara stood at the center of it all, dressed in her best lace gown. Her gold earrings shone under the sun, and her face carried a proud smile. She looked like a queen awaiting her king. To everyone watching, she appeared to be a devoted wife, happy to see her husband again after so long. Inside, however, she was thinking only of how much money he might have brought back. "Ah, my dear Chaik," she whispered to herself, fixing her head tie in the mirror. "You'll see how much I've kept your name shining in this village. You owe me for that." Then she laughed softly, not realizing how close her downfall was. Soon a car horn sounded outside. The crowd cheered. "He's here. He's here," they shouted. Amara's heart leaped with excitement. She quickly walked to the gate, pretending to wipe tears of joy. "Oh, my husband," she said loudly so everyone could hear. "You are finally home." The gate opened slowly and there stood Chaik, calm, neatly dressed in a white native outfit, holding his cane as he used to. His face was peaceful, but his eyes, hidden behind dark glasses, carried a quiet strength. He smiled politely at the people and greeted them warmly. "Welcome home, Chaik," shouted one of the villagers. "We missed your songs." Chaik nodded, his voice soft. "Thank you all. It's good to be home." Amara ran forward, spreading her arms wide as if to embrace him, but Chaik lifted a hand and stopped her. The crowd fell silent. Amara froze, her smile fading. "Amara," he said in a calm, steady voice, "you don't have to pretend anymore." The guests looked at one another, whispering, "Pretend? What does he mean?" Amara forced a nervous laugh. "What do you mean, my love? I've been waiting for you. Everyone knows how much I missed you." Chaik turned his head slightly, his lips curving into a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Missed me?" he repeated slowly. "Is that what you told them?" The air grew tense. The crowd could feel something was wrong, but they didn't understand yet. Then quietly, Chaik reached up and removed his dark glasses. Gasps filled the air. His eyes were open, clear and steady. He looked around, scanning every face, and then stopped at Amara. Her body stiffened as if lightning had struck her. She took a small step back. "Why, you can see," she whispered, trembling. Chaik nodded slowly. "Yes, Amara. I can see now. I can see everything." The people clapped with joy, thinking it was a miracle. But Chaik raised his hand for silence. His calm voice carried through the crowd. "Everyone," he said, "thank you for welcoming me. But before you celebrate, there is something you must know. The woman standing before you, the one you call my wife, has lived a lie." The murmur grew louder. Amara's face turned pale. "Chaik, stop this," she said softly, her voice shaking. "You're embarrassing me." But he continued, his tone gentle but firm. "While I was blind, I trusted her completely. I loved her. I thought she saw me for my heart. But while I could not see, she mocked me. She laughed at my blindness. She told her friends I was nothing but a fool with money." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small recorder. "I did not plan to expose her," he said quietly. "But after I left, I received help from my cousin Obinna, who collected evidence, recordings and messages she sent to her friends." He pressed a button and suddenly, Amara's own voice filled the air. "I only married him for his money. He can't see, he can't question me. I'm the luckiest woman alive." The laughter in the recording was cruel, echoing through the compound. People gasped. Some covered their mouths in shock. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Amara's knees went weak. "No, no, that's not me," she said quickly. "Someone must have changed my voice. It's not true." Chaik turned to her calmly, his eyes steady and full of quiet sadness. "Amara," he said softly, "don't lie again. You mocked me for being blind, but now that I can see, your lies have no place to hide." Tears filled her eyes. She fell to her knees and grabbed his legs. "Please, Chaik, I was foolish. I didn't mean it. I was scared of living poor. Forgive me, please." But Chaik gently stepped back. He looked at her with compassion, not anger. "I once loved you with my eyes closed," he said. "I believed your heart was as beautiful as your face. But now I see you for who you truly are." The crowd was silent. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. An old woman from the neighborhood shook her head sadly. "Ah, pride has destroyed another home," she murmured. Amara sobbed loudly. "Please, Chike. I was wrong. Give me one more chance." Chike looked down at her, his face calm but distant. "A heart that mocks love cannot understand it. I forgive you, Amara, but I cannot live with you any more." He turned to the people and bowed his head slightly. "Thank you for your kindness. I do not share this story to shame her but to remind us all, love is not something to play with. True love does not mock and real beauty is not seen with the eyes." The villagers nodded, moved by his words. As Chike walked toward his car, the crowd stepped aside respectfully. Amara tried to reach for him again, crying uncontrollably, but two of her own friends held her back. "Let him go," one whispered. "You did this to yourself." Chike paused once more at the gate. Without turning, he said quietly, "You laughed when I was blind, Amara. But now that I can see, your laughter has become your tears." Then he got into the car and left, the engine's soft hum fading into the distance. Amara fell to the ground, her fine gown now covered in dust. She cried until her voice broke, realizing too late that the man she had mocked was the only person who had truly loved her. The villagers slowly went back to their homes, shaking their heads and whispering about what they had just witnessed. Some said it was justice. Others said it was mercy. And in the quiet of that evening, as the sun set over the village, one truth remained clear. Sometimes the greatest revenge is not anger or hate, but walking away with your dignity intact. Chike had done just that. The next morning the village was quiet. The noise from the wedding crowd had faded, and the dust from the previous day's chaos had settled. Only the soft sounds of birds filled the air. Inside her house, Amara sat alone, her eyes swollen from crying all night. The fine clothes she had worn to impress everyone now lay crumpled beside her. Her hands trembled as she thought about the man she had once mocked. The same man who had walked away with calm strength while she was left in shame. For the first time in her life, Amara truly felt blind. She looked around the house that had once been full of laughter and comfort. Everything reminded her of Chike, his walking cane, his favorite chair by the window, the soft notes of his old guitar. She remembered how he would sit there and sing for her, his voice full of love and peace. She used to ignore him, sometimes even laugh at his songs when he couldn't see her face. Now she would have given anything just to hear him sing again. Meanwhile, Chike's life began to change in beautiful ways. After leaving the village, he moved to the city and decided to start anew. He had peace in his heart, not bitterness. Every morning, he woke up and thanked God for the gift of sight and the wisdom to see beyond appearances. He poured his pain into music, writing songs that spoke about forgiveness, strength, and the meaning of love. One of his songs, "Light Beyond Eyes," became popular on the radio. It touched many hearts across the country. People who heard it often cried, saying the song reminded them that love is more than what the eyes can see. When reporters asked Chike what inspired his song, he only smiled and said, "A lesson from the past." But Chike didn't stop there. He remembered how difficult life had been when he was blind, how people pitied him, how hard it was to find work, and how little help existed for people like him. So, using his earnings and the money he once saved for his marriage, he opened a small center for blind children. He named it the Light Foundation. At first, it was just a single room where children learned to read and play music. But as time went on, donations came in and the foundation grew. They taught the children how to live with confidence and dream big, no matter their limitations. Chike would often tell them, "You may not see with your eyes, but you can still see with your heart. That's where real light lives." The children adored him. They called him Teacher Chike, and sang his songs every morning. Watching them smile made him happier than he had ever been. Back in the village, people talked about him with pride. "That blind man we once pitied has now become a blessing to others," they said. His story inspired many, not just because he had regained his sight but because he had chosen forgiveness over revenge. Amara, on the other hand, found it difficult to live with herself. Wherever she went, people whispered. Some pitied her, others judged her. She could no longer hold her head high in the market or walk proudly through the streets. She tried to start a new life, but nothing worked out. The beauty she once relied on began to fade, and the friends who used to flatter her disappeared when her money ran out. At night, she would often dream of Chike. In her dreams, he stood before her, smiling gently but saying nothing. When she tried to reach out, he would fade into light, leaving her alone again. Those nights always ended with her crying quietly into her pillow. One day, Amara heard that Chike's foundation was organizing an event for blind children in the city. Something in her heart pushed her to go. She dressed simply and took a long bus ride there. When she arrived, she stood at the back of the hall, afraid to go near. She watched Chaik on stage, speaking to the crowd with calm confidence. He wore a white shirt and smiled warmly at the children sitting around him. He looked peaceful, almost radiant. There was no trace of anger in his eyes, only kindness. When the program ended, she wanted to speak to him but couldn't find the courage. She turned away quietly and left before he could notice her. As she walked home, tears fell freely down her cheeks. "He truly found peace," she whispered, "while I am the one still in darkness." From that day she changed. She stopped chasing vanity and began helping the old and poor in her village. Whenever someone asked her why, she would sigh softly and say, "Because I once hurt a good man, and I will spend the rest of my life learning what true love means." Years later, a journalist visited Chaik to write about his foundation. During the interview, the man asked, "Sir, what happened to the woman who betrayed you? People say she now lives quietly in your old village." Chaik smiled faintly. His eyes softened with the kind of forgiveness that comes from true peace. "Her tears were enough punishment," he said gently. "I don't wish her harm. She taught me that some people see only with their eyes, while others see with their hearts. I just hope she has learned to see love." The journalist was silent for a moment before saying, "Your story is one of grace, Chaik. Most people would have sought revenge." Chaik shook his head. "Revenge doesn't heal a broken soul. Only forgiveness can do that. My pain made me stronger and my blindness taught me to see." As the years went on, the Light Foundation grew into a large organization that helped thousands of blind children across the country. Schools were built, scholarships were given, and music classes filled the halls with joy. Whenever Chaik watched the children sing and laugh, his heart swelled with peace. Sometimes in quiet moments he thought of Amara, not with anger but with compassion. He hoped she had found the same light he had found through pain. Amara, too, spent the rest of her life serving others in silence. People who once mocked her began to respect her for her humility and kindness. But she never forgot Chaik's words, "I once loved you with my eyes closed. Now I see you for who you are." Those words stayed with her forever. In her old age, she would often tell young women, "Don't judge a man by what he lacks. Sometimes, the man you laugh at may be the one who will one day teach you what love truly means." Chaik's story spread far and wide. In schools, churches, and homes, people told the tale of the blind groom, the man whose forgiveness changed lives. His story reminded everyone that beauty is not seen with the eyes but felt with the heart, and that kindness, once mocked, always finds its way back as light. And whenever someone asked about Amara, Chaik would only smile and say softly, "She found her lesson and I found my peace." The world remembered him not as a blind man, but as a man who could see more clearly than most. The end.